Some things age like wine and some things age like mouldy bread. Is this going to be a bottle of wine? Or mouldy bread that you're not going to ever eat? And I'm saying that because another one of those old speakers I'm personally interested in. You've been talking to me for a long time about them. There's a lot of speakers, let's face it, that have come out over the years. I'm trying to catch up on them because I'm personally interested myself. This came out in 2018. It's one of the old boys now. Oh, don't be sexist. One of the old boys, one of the old girls, one of the old people, maybe we should say. For once in my life, this is a balanced video. Why is it a balanced video out? Well, because at the moment, if I look on Amazon, I can get that for 80 quid. That's the Motion Boom, my pound for pound world champion. My former pound for pound world champion, the Motion Plus, is about 80 quid. And the Doss Soundbox XL, when I looked on Amazon this morning, it was about 80 quid. So all about 80 quid. A lot of you still say, oh, but I still like the Soundbox XL because it's got the sound is full at all volumes. Now, I don't know if it's the only speaker you've ever had. You've got a million speakers and you can compare them all, and it could be one of the greatest speakers of all time. Let's get a clue to whether this is one of the greatest speakers of all time. Let's have a look at the frequency response. So between around 300 hertz up to 5 kilohertz is actually very flat. It's within 5 decibels right through that range. That's nicely flat. But as soon as you hit that 5 kilohertz, though, it's rolling off. Not going to get much of the harmonics, and it's affecting the highs. And then again, upper bass peak with a roll-off, although that roll-off doesn't really get too aggressive till you're below 60 hertz. So it promises some deep bass, but it's going to be upper bass dominant. It does limit from 80%, from 90%. As you push the volume, it'll only be the mids and the highs that get louder. But mids and highs, when I say highs, that roll-off from 5 kilohertz is all the way from low volume to high volume. Let's see how that translates in the real world. So, not a lot of bass adjustment. What do I mean by that? Well, you're less sensitive to bass and the highs, to be honest, at low volume. So we normally have, in the old days, we called it a loudness button. Give you a bit of a bass boost and a little bit less of a boost in the highs. And then to your ears, that would sound the same at low volume as at high volume. This is one of those speakers that doesn't really have much bass adjustment. It's quite linear all the way up until you hit about 80%. And then as we got used to, it does limit. To be fair, it doesn't limit totally to 90%, but it does limit. The other thing that's quite worrying in my frequency response measurements is rolling off from 5 kilohertz. Does that matter? Well, over 6 kilohertz is probably all harmonics. Well, mostly harmonics. What are harmonics? Well, it's not the fundamental note, so it's not the first note, but it's kind of like, think of it as the echo, as the notes decay. It's what we would call part of the atmosphere of the sound. In fact, harmonics are so important that if you just play the harmonics and not the fundamental note, your brain would actually reinstate the fundamental note. Your brain is that easy to trick, and harmonics are that important. It's upper bass heavy, but hey ho, it does have some deeper bass. But will you hear that deeper bass over the upper bass? Only one way to find out. Just quickly to say, what is it on paper? I said it was 80 quid. And never come across this before. This is made in China. Yes, of course, most speakers are made in China. It has got a small battery at 16.3 watt hours. That's exceedingly small for a speaker like that at today's standards. It is only SBC codec. In fact, the only speaker on this table with aptX, a higher end, not the highest end codec, but a higher end codec than the most basic SBC, is indeed the former pound for pound world champion, the Motion Plus. It is an old speaker. It's Bluetooth 4. You can't do a stereo pairing if you had a pair of them. It doesn't have a USB-C, but it's an old speaker. That means it's got an auxiliary input. Can't use it as a power bank. You can't use it as a phone speaker. But something that people like, you can use it as a standalone speaker because it's got a TF slot. You can use a flash card and you wouldn't need any other device. A lot of you really like that. On paper, this is not a 30 watt speaker. This is 32 watts. I don't know how they came up with the 32. Didn't round it to 30 watts. As I hope you would know by now, wattage is not, the be all and end all to tell you how loud a speaker will go. There are a lot of other factors, but one thing about this is no USB-C charging. It is a barrel charger, but that means we get 12 volts, 2.5 amps. It will charge faster than most of these USB-C supporting connection chargers or speakers. 1.5 kilos makes this around the same as the Motion Boom. That's only 1 kilo, the Motion Plus. Ah, it's got no chance. It's only 1 kilo. So there must be lots of guts to that at 1.5 kilos. It's only IPX4. Don't drop it in water, but it can get a little bit of water. But hey ho, they're claiming, well, it's not as bad as Sony, who claim 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz on every speaker. That's ridiculous. I don't know how they get away with it. Why is that even allowed anymore, to just say whatever you want? I'm gonna come out with a speaker that says 1 hertz to 6 million kilohertz. And I bet you someone will buy it because they believe it. Anyway, they say 40 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Well, plus or minus what? It means nothing. If you don't tell us the range, it means nothing. In terms of YouTube, 170 milliseconds. That's seeing the lips move today and hearing it tomorrow. It does have tweeters. What you really want to know is, come on out. You're always talking. What does it sound like? All right, 45% volume comparison. It's a big ask, isn't it? It's a 2018 speaker against the pound for pound world champion, undefeated in 2021 or even 2020. What chance has it got? Well, at 45% volume, it doesn't have much chance. It's got very dominant mids and upper bass. That's what I'm really hearing. It's quite a closed-in sound, and it's quite a hard-edge sound compared to. Look, the EQ does not suit 45%, around 45% volumes, where it's normally quite muddy sounding against other speakers. And although you can definitely hear there's a lack of mids here, I actually still prefer the Motion Boom. Now, against the former Power World Champion, now defeated, Soundcore Motion Plus. This is closer. So, former Pound for Pound World Champion. It's a lot smaller. It's only 1 kilo. That's 1.5 kilos. Not just weight, but in terms of size, I could put another Motion Plus on there. They would add up to, in terms of actual dimensions, the Doss. So, it's good going at all that the Motion Plus can compete against the Doss. Although it's an old speaker. Now, I would say it's closer in a matter of taste because very different sound signatures. Clearly, the bass is more dominant compared to the Motion Plus on the Doss Soundbox XL. But although it's more bass heavy, to me, it's more of a veiled sound. And it's a darker type of sound compared to the sparkly, detailed sound at these lower volumes of Soundcore Motion Plus. We're going to have to push it a bit more because personally I do not listen at these volumes. Around 70-75% volume.
One's a compliment, two's a crowd, three's a party coming, move around like first rush when the school is out, when the booze is up, when the sun is down. Enjoy the ride, get some pillows in the Chevy. It's like a darling, low and heavy. Take your time, let me know when you're ready. Couple months I've been messing with this steady. Open for plans tonight. Lost in the afterglow. Oh, girl, your love for me keeps calling me, so I'm calling you. Lord, give me life to find. I long for your company. Oh, girl, your love for me is a part of me, my biology. It won't be over till the fat lady sings. Oh, you a trip, cause me and you, we got a thing. My sunshine state, hair curly like a string. Just a big ol' ooh, smile, that's about all you gotta bring. So, enjoy the ride, got some pillows in the Chevy. It's like a darling, loaded and heavy. Take your time, let me know when you're ready. Couple months I've been messing with this steady. Open for plans tonight. Lost in the afterglow. Oh, girl, your love for me keeps calling me, so I'm calling you. Lord, give me life to find. I long for your company. Oh, girl, your love for me is a part of me, my biology. Самолет несет меня, будто в кулаке зажав великан. В иллюминаторе земля. Самолет несет меня, большой стальной великан. В иллюминаторе земля. Open for plans tonight. Lost in the afterglow. Oh, girl, your love for me keeps calling me, so I'm calling you. Lord, give me life to find. I long for your company. Oh, girl, your love for me is a part of me, my biology.
It's not me pound for pound world champion for nothing. There is a reason. Does deep bass. Does deep bass at this price level, which we've never come across before. Well, I've never come across it. If you have, let me know, because I'll be quite interested. But in this particular comparison against these three speakers, there's only one speaker on this table that can do justice to a bass-heavy track. It's the Soundcore Motion Boom. It's now struggling, isn't it? Depending, if it wasn't a bass-heavy track, it wouldn't struggle quite the same. But on a bass-heavy track, it can't do deep bass. The Motion Plus is struggling. The Doss Soundbox XL can certainly do deep bass. And I would say it's beating the Plus at these volumes on this particular track. Remember, a lot of this is track related, but the winner at 70% for me, again, is the Soundcore Motion Boom. It's 4 decibels up in bass on the Doss. It's 8 decibels up in deep bass. Indeed, on the Soundcore Motion Plus, its little brother. I would say, however, it's very smooth. Look, it's not the clearest of speakers. It's 80 quid, mate. You know, come on. It's not going to be the greatest speaker in the world. And it is quite smooth. It's not the clearest of speakers. It doesn't have the greatest clarity. But overall, I think the trade-offs make it still the pound for pound world champion. And in this particular comparison, it certainly gets a really sparkly, detailed speaker like the Motion Plus. It's going to come over as sounding quite smooth, but it's still the winner for me. Is the speaker I would pick up if I only had to pick up one speaker. But what happens when we go to maximum volume?
When you're home, always hanging by your phone. Do I even know you? And I get paranoid sometimes, 'cause I know that you ain't mine, and I'm lost without you. You still be the one I talk to when I'm sad. Can't you see now tainted love is all we had? Our issues run so deep, now when I try to sleep, I feel so bad. I should leave, and by the time it's done, I'll be
So, loudest of the bunch is the Motion Boom, followed by the Motion Plus, followed by the Doss Soundbox XL. Massively louder is the Motion Boom by 3 decibels over the Motion Plus, which again is 2 decibels up on the Doss, which means it's 5 decibels down on the Motion Boom. There just isn't the headroom on the Doss. And not only is there just not the headroom, and I have to say, at all volumes, there's an incredibly loud noise floor. Noisier than I've ever seen before, to be fair. We look at the roll-off down to around 35 hertz, and from that point on, that's all noise. That's a rise in noise. Minus 30 the noise floor, and that's in line with the peaks. It's an incredibly noisy speaker at all volumes. Compare that to the Motion Boom, where, as should be the case, the noise floor is well below the main frequencies. Same again with Motion Plus. And then look at that, the Doss. I think I only saw this on the W King D8, and that's only when it was really pushed. The only place the Soundbox XL can hold its own is in, it does retain some deep bass. Minus 33 is 4 decibels up on the Motion Plus, but it's 4 decibels down again on the deep bass of the Motion Boom. So although the overall balance is okay, it just doesn't go very loud, and it does limit its deep bass from 80%. The Motion Plus has the most upper bass here at minus 24. From mid bass and down, it's the Motion Boom all the way.
And the winner is, yeah, of course, it's the Motion Boom. It's my pound for pound world champion. I'm keeping the faith. It's pound for pound world champion. Not because I work for Soundcore. You keep telling me I work for Soundcore, and I keep telling you they haven't paid me a penny. In fact, the one time I emailed them asking if I could get a coloured Motion Plus, they completely ignored me. That's how close I am with Soundcore. However, I like the products that I'm hearing. My pound for pound world champion. The Doss is lost. Come to maximum volume, although on paper it's 2 watts more than these other 2 speakers. Maximum volume, it just doesn't have the oomph if it's all about clarity, you may still prefer the Soundcore Motion Plus, which is clearer than the Doss, but the Doss has a little bit more in terms of that deeper bass. You may prefer that, but I don't really see a reason why you'd ever. If you didn't have one of these two speakers, why would you buy the Doss Soundbox XL? Unless you're reading some of those fanboy comments. Yeah, it can still kick it. It's full at all volumes, no matter what the track. I read some of those comments. Look, I didn't expect much. I know it's an older speaker. I expected more than I heard, to be absolutely honest. I've heard older speakers that do sound better than that. So, yes, I was a bit underwhelmed. There's only one speaker here that I would personally buy if I had to buy one of these three speakers, and it's going to be the Soundcore Motion Boom. If you want to do more critical listening, it's going to be the Soundcore Motion Plus of these three speakers. I don't really see a reason to buy the Doss Soundbox XL compared to these other two, because if you want more detailed, you go Plus. If you want more bass, you go Boom. You know, it is an old speaker. It's showing its age, and a lot of you who's still saying, "Well, I'm happy with it. It's everything I need." Well, I think it's time to upgrade. Quite honestly, a lot of you are still hanging on to your JBL Chance 3. I was a huge JBL Chance 3 fan, but guys, we've moved on a bit. I know there's different versions of these JBL Chance 5s. I've got the TL version. I know there's the ND version, which, as far as I'm being told, the highs are a bit smoother, but there's a little bit less bass. That doesn't sound like a better version. I've got the TL version of Chance 5. To me, it sounds like the Chance 3 with some bass. I don't know why I'm talking about the Chance 3 or the Chance 5 in this particular video. You're probably already turned off, but if you haven't, I'm just going to say thank you for watching, and I hope you got something out of this particular video.
I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Ain't no project wife, got my logic right, guess I'm not your type. I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Sorry, ma, I ain't get it right. I'ma just live my life. I ain't about that. I ain't about that life.